The roar of the engines tore through the stifling atmosphere as the exploration vessel hurtled through the shredded atmosphere of a dead planet. Black, swirling clouds churned outside the thick glass, while the red light from the control panel flickered relentlessly, casting an eerie glow on the tense faces of the expedition team. Clad in silver-gray pressure suits, they gripped their safety harnesses tightly, their eyes fixed on the central viewport, where a colossal creature was bound by shimmering blue energy cords. Its black-silver fur glimmered like fallen starlight, shimmering faintly in the dim glow, but deep, gaping wounds stretched across its body, oozing dark purple blood that stained the cold metal floor in jagged pools. The creature's deep violet eyes flared wide, blazing like fire in the darkness, wild and anguished, as though they held an ocean of mysteries within them. "Hold it steady," one team member shouted, their voice cracking with panic as the energy cords trembled violently, emitting a piercing screech. The creature roared, a sound like thunder that shook the entire cabin. An invisible wave rippled from its body, bending the metal panels on the walls and eliciting a ghastly screech as the steel warped and tore. The captain, his face etched with battle scars, clenched his fists on the console and barked into the comms, "Cytara IX, we've secured the target. Prepare the highest security containment, it's unstable. I repeat, it's unstable." In the distance, the Cytara IX research station emerged from the cosmic night like a massive emerald gem, floating in the boundless void. Its curved, transparent panels hugged a glowing central core, where hundreds of signal lights pulsed like the heartbeat of a living entity. Giant robotic arms extended from the station's frame, transporting materials and data with flawless precision, performing a perfect technological ballet. This was the grand achievement of the Space Alliance, a scientific fortress tasked with reviving life on lost planets. But today, an oppressive tension hung over the station, as though an unseen shadow weighed it down. Alarms wailed faintly as the exploration vessel made an emergency landing, carrying the mysterious creature dragged from the ashes of a ruined world. In the command office, cold white light illuminated the tall figure of Dr. Liz Maris. Her silver-tinted skin, a hallmark of advanced bioengineering, reflected the glow of the holographic screens, her sharp, vertical eyes scanning data at an astonishing speed. Arms crossed, her voice rang out, icy yet tinged with rare strain, "They've brought it back. Prep the medical and security teams, I want everything under tight control. No mistakes." The automatic door slid open with a faint hiss, and a young man stepped in, exuding a calm that clashed with the chaos outside. Aren Kael, a veterinarian renowned for treating the rarest creatures in the universe, was equally infamous for his unorthodox decisions. Dressed in a simple white coat, his tousled brown hair swayed faintly in the air from the ventilation system, his bright eyes gleaming with ceaseless curiosity. He stood quietly in the room, hands in his pockets, his gaze drifting over Maris as if trying to read her thoughts. "Thanks for coming quickly, Kael," Maris said, her eyes still glued to the holographic display showing the newly landed vessel. "I didn't expect to call a civilian doctor like you here." Aren tilted his head slightly, his tone calm yet laced with curiosity. "Chief Maris, I'm just as surprised. Cytara IX is the pinnacle of science, why would it need someone like me?" Maris turned, her gaze sharp as a blade slicing through the stillness. "You weren't summoned for your reputation," she cut in, her voice like ice, "but because you're one of the few reckless enough to face this." She raised a hand, and the hologram flared, revealing the massive creature now locked in a containment chamber deep within the station. Its thick black-silver fur sparkled like a starry night, its deep violet eyes staring into the void, beautiful yet terrifying. Massive wounds ran across its body, purple blood soaking the cold metal floor, forming streaks like the work of a mad painter. "This is Elarin," Maris said slowly, her voice growing heavy with palpable tension. "An apex predator, thought extinct for thousands of years. The expedition team just retrieved it from a dead planet, where it was once the cause of a genocidal catastrophe. We don't fully understand it, but the power within its body is enough to make anyone tremble." Aren studied the hologram in silence, his eyes tracing every detail of the creature. He noticed something odd, the air around Elarin seemed to shimmer faintly, as if an unseen force emanated from it, causing the chamber's metal edges to quiver subtly. "It looks severely injured," he said, his voice low but thoughtful. Maris nodded, her gaze darkening with an unspoken, ancient dread. Exactly. And I won't beat around the bush, Kael. I'm about to order its immediate termination. Aren's hands clenched instinctively at the cold declaration. Termination. But why? Maris stepped closer, her eyes piercing yet burdened with deep pain. I've lost too many dear colleagues to creatures like Elarin, Kael. We tried to study them, to tame them, but it always ended in tragedy. One small mistake is all it takes for disaster. This thing isn't an exception, it's the reason that planet was destroyed. I can't risk Cytara IX sharing the same fate. Aren fell silent, part of him understanding Maris's fear. Tales of ancient beasts with apocalyptic power were no stranger in this universe. Yet his compassion and professional duty urged him down a different path. He took a deep breath, his voice firm. I want to see it in person. At least let me confirm it's beyond saving before we decide to destroy it. The vast containment chamber lay deep beneath Cytara IX, cold and suffocating, the air thick with the scent of metal and faint dampness from the ventilation. Thick steel walls, reinforced with pale green energy grids, hummed softly like the breath of a colossal machine. Researchers stood at a distance behind soundproof glass, their anxious eyes tracking Aren's every step as he approached the sturdy cage. Inside, Elarin lay still, its massive form filling nearly the entire cramped space. Its black-silver fur shimmered like a galaxy, each strand faintly trembling with its shallow breaths. Deep wounds still bled purple, staining the metal floor in chaotic streaks. Its cold, glowing violet eyes locked onto Aren, fathomless as a cosmic abyss, mysterious and wary, as if sizing him up from an untouchable distance. Aren stopped a few steps from the cage, drawing a deep breath to steady himself against the invisible pressure radiating from the creature. "Hello," he said softly, his voice gentle as a whisper to an old friend. He raised a hand slowly, palm outward in a peaceful, non-threatening gesture. "I'm Aren Kael. I'm here to help you." Elarin shifted slightly, letting out a low growl that rumbled like an undersea current. The air around it wavered oddly, making the nearby glass tremble faintly, as though an unseen force tested the confines of its prison. Aren froze for a moment, sensing the lurking danger, but he didn't retreat. Kneeling, he met its deep violet gaze, his voice still soft. "I see your wounds. I know you're in pain and scared. Let me help you escape that suffering." The creature roared again, its sharp teeth glinting under the chamber's cold white light, its violet eyes blazing with hostility and doubt. But Aren didn't flinch. He slowly pressed his hand to the frigid metal floor, fingers brushing the surface as if to convey sincerity through every small motion. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered, his voice dropping to a vow. "I just want you to live." After a tense silence, Elarin gradually lowered its head, its gaze still wild but the ferocity easing slightly. A faint groan escaped its throat, as if the pain had breached the defenses it had built. Aren offered a small smile, a fragile yet genuine spark of connection flickering within him. Behind the soundproof glass, Maris watched it all, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles whitened, her eyes a mix of worry and vigilance. She murmured into her comms, her voice a final warning, "Be careful, Kael. It's unlike anything you've faced. Don't let its appearance fool you." Aren didn't reply, standing still as he gazed into the creature's fathomless violet eyes, his resolve crystallizing. He would save it, even if it meant risking his own life. Aren spent the afternoon observing Elarin through the thick glass of the containment chamber. No one spoke to him, though he occasionally felt the wary glances of the researchers around him. They didn't understand what he was thinking, and Aren himself wasn't certain he could turn this perilous situation into something good. As the station's lights shifted to night mode, the staff gradually left the research area. Aren remained alone before the mysterious, wild, and hostile creature. A sudden wave of unease washed over him, but he quickly pushed it aside. Now, he needed to hold fast to his belief, only sincerity could bridge the gap to Elarin. He approached the heavy metal door leading into the chamber. The automated security system scanned him, a cold robotic voice issuing a warning, "Dr. Kael, you are about to enter a maximum danger zone. Please confirm one final time." Aren took a deep breath and replied calmly, confirmed. Open the door. The massive metal door slid open with a faint screech. A rush of cold air and the sharp, wild scent of the creature flooded out, heightening Aren's tension. He stepped inside, the door sealing shut behind him, severing all ties to the outside world. Before him, Elarin had risen at some point, its towering form casting a shadow that nearly engulfed the cramped space. Its violet eyes gleamed with danger, its jaws slightly parted to reveal terrifyingly sharp teeth. "It's okay," Aren said gently, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I'm not here to harm you." But Elarin didn't respond with calm. Suddenly, it roared, a sound like rolling thunder echoing through the room. For a panicked moment, Aren thought he'd made the worst mistake of his life. He stood frozen, his heart pounding like a war drum. Then Elarin lunged toward him, its rippling muscles moving like lightning. Aren instinctively raised his arms to shield himself, eyes squeezed shut, bracing for a fatal blow. But the strike never came. He opened his eyes slowly. The creature had stopped inches from him, its hot breath washing over his face. Elarin's gaze had shifted, the rage softened, replaced by confusion and palpable pain. It stared at Aren, locked in a fierce internal struggle, as if it couldn't fathom why it hadn't attacked. Aren steadied his breathing, realizing how close he'd come to death. But he also saw something more vital. Elarin wasn't the cold-blooded predator everyone believed. It was suffering, wrestling with memories or pain he couldn't yet grasp. "I understand," he whispered, his voice gentler still. "You don't want to hurt me, do you? You're just in agony." Elarin stepped back slowly, lowering itself with a faint groan. The long gash on its side bled more heavily, likely worsened by its sudden lunge. "You're not okay," Aren said, concern lacing his voice. He pulled an instant painkiller syringe from his coat pocket and edged closer, moving deliberately to avoid startling it. "I'll ease your pain right away, all right? Just medicine, nothing else." Elarin hesitated, its eyes wary, but it eventually stilled, allowing Aren to approach. He injected the drug gently near the wound. Within seconds, Elarin exhaled in relief. It looked at him again, its gaze less icy, now tinged with curiosity. "There, no more pain, right?" Aren said softly, maintaining a safe distance. "See? We can trust each other." The creature lowered its head further, its posture visibly relaxed. The small ears atop its head drooped slightly, a subtle sign of gratitude. Aren smiled faintly, the earlier tension melting away. "You're not as ferocious as I thought," he murmured. "You're just a being who wants to live and be understood." Behind the soundproof glass, Liz Maris had witnessed it all. She stared at the scene with a complex expression, shock, fear, and a profound impact from Aren's calm, humane approach. An assistant near her spoke anxiously, "Dr. Maris, should we pull Dr. Kael out now? It's too dangerous." Maris paused, her eyes still fixed on Aren and Elarin. Finally, she shook her head slightly, her voice a mere breath. "Wait a little longer." Maybe, he was right. In her heart, old memories of a colleague lost to a similar creature resurfaced, bringing sharp pain. Yet now, watching Aren slowly succeed in building trust with this dangerous being, a part of her began to hope. Perhaps this time would be different. Perhaps Aren could achieve what she'd failed to do in the past. Inside the chamber, Aren sat quietly beside Elarin, two vastly different beings now cautiously exploring each other in tense silence. He knew this fragile bond would change everything, but he also understood deeply, this was only the beginning. The next day, news of Aren's successful interaction with Elarin spread like wildfire across Cytara IX, becoming the talk of every staff member on the station. Aren suddenly found himself in the spotlight, both a hero and a reckless fool in their eyes. But he didn't care. He spent the day treating Elarin, focusing entirely on ensuring the massive creature recovered as quickly as possible. Elarin, too, grew accustomed to Aren's presence, though the wariness in its violet eyes never fully faded. Aren didn't rush it. He knew building trust with a creature so deeply wounded required time and patience. That afternoon, as Aren left the chamber and discussed Elarin's health stats with a technician, a shrill alarm blared repeatedly. Red lights flashed incessantly, and a cold robotic voice announced, "Alert, dangerous entity has escaped containment. All personnel evacuate immediately." Aren spun around, his heart pounding. The chamber door was shattered, smoke and dust billowing out. People fled the research area in panic, their screams echoing down the halls. "What the hell did you do, Kael?" Maris rushed over, her face pale with anger and fear. "It's breaking free. I warned you about this." "I didn't do anything," Aren replied quickly, his voice taut but firm. "Maybe something spooked Elarin. Let me handle it." "Handle it?" Maris shouted. "Do you know what happens if it gets out?" "I'll bring it back," Aren said resolutely, giving her no chance to argue. He dashed back toward the chamber. Inside, Elarin stood motionless amid the wreckage, its eyes a mix of confusion and heightened alertness. As Aren entered, it turned to stare at him intently. The tension hung like a taut string, one wrong move away from disaster. It's all right," Aren whispered, raising a hand to calm it. "You're safe, I'm here." "What scared you?" Elarin let out a soft growl, as if trying to communicate, but at that moment, a loud explosion erupted from the ceiling. Aren looked up, horrified, as a massive metal slab plummeted toward him. He shut his eyes, bracing for pain. But in the next instant, a dark shape lunged forward to shield him. Elarin had moved with lightning speed, taking the full brunt of the falling debris on its massive back to protect Aren. A deafening crash rang out. Aren opened his eyes, staring at the creature standing over him. Elarin growled softly, turning to meet his gaze with eyes that, for the first time, held a gentle, protective warmth, like a true comrade. "Elarin," Aren gasped, his voice thick with emotion and disbelief. "You just saved me." The creature didn't answer in words, but its eyes said everything. It had chosen Aren as its companion, and from this moment, he knew their bond was unbreakable. As the situation stabilized, staff returned to the scene with heightened caution. Maris stepped into the room, her eyes wide with shock at the sight before her. "Kael, what just happened?" she asked quietly, struggling to mask her confusion. "Elarin didn't mean harm," Aren replied confidently, resting a hand gently on the creature's massive form as if to shield it. "It broke out just to find me." Maris frowned, her gaze a mix of doubt and fear. "This is exactly what I feared most, Kael. You realize what you're doing? It's chosen you, it sees you as its pack. That's more dangerous than if it hated you." "I understand," Aren said softly. "But I trust it. Elarin won't hurt anyone as long as I'm here. And if you're gone?" Maris pressed, her tone heavy with implication. "What kind of threat will it become then?" Aren paused, then shook his head. "I won't let that happen. I'll take full responsibility." Maris studied him for a long moment before reluctantly nodding. "For now. I'll give you time to prove it. But remember, Kael, one slip, and this whole station pays the price." Aren nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I understand." Maris turned and walked away, her heart heavy. She knew Aren truly believed in Elarin, but memories of a dear colleague killed by a similar creature kept her from fully trusting. That night, Aren sat alone beside Elarin, reflecting on all that had transpired. Elarin lay quietly, its violet eyes fixed on him as if sensing his mood. "We'll be okay, right?" Aren murmured, patting its massive form lightly. Elarin let out a soft, soothing huff, like a gentle reply. Aren smiled. The future might hold countless challenges, but with this unique companion by his side, he was ready to face them all. That morning, Cytara IX settled into an eerie calm. Since Elarin's breakout 2 days prior, the station's staff had grown wary, more cautious of Aren and the mysterious creature's every move. Some avoided him as he passed, fearing a single misstep could unleash Elarin's wrath again. Aren understood but chose silence, focusing solely on his mission, restoring Elarin's health and cementing their trust. He'd just finished a morning checkup when an urgent summons came for the command room. Stepping inside, he found Dr. Maris standing before a large screen, her face etched with alarming tension. The air felt frigid, sinking Aren's heart. "What's happening, Maris?" he asked, joining her side. She turned, her expression graver than ever. "An unidentified spacecraft is approaching fast. Its signal isn't registered with the Alliance." Aren glanced at the holographic display, where a large, dark-painted ship, scarred from past battles, loomed ominously closer. "It's a pirate vessel," Maris said quietly, eyes locked on the screen. "The shape and signal are unmistakable. They're not here for peace." Aren frowned. What could they want? "We've got nothing worth stealing." Maris's gaze darkened with intent. "We don't. But Elarin does." Aren froze. He'd anticipated this possibility, but hearing it aloud drove home the gravity. "We can't let them take Elarin," he said firmly. "If a creature like that falls into smugglers' hands, the consequences will be catastrophic." Maris met his eyes, cold and cautious. "I agree, but if they attack, can Elarin really help us? Or will it make things worse?" Aren held her gaze, resolute. "Elarin chose me. I trust it completely." Alarms blared across the station, a cold voice echoing, "Emergency alert. Unauthorized vessel detected. All personnel proceed to safety zones immediately." Aren and Maris exchanged a look. Before they could speak, a powerful explosion rocked the station. Metal walls shuddered violently, dust raining down as screens flickered. A panicked guard burst in, face ashen. "They've breached us. Pirates hit the west corridor, there are casualties." "So fast?" Maris paled. "They're heading here, or worse, straight for the creature lab." Aren didn't hesitate, bolting from the room. Maris shouted after him, "Kael, where are you going?" "To Elarin. Before they get there," he called back. "It's our only hope now." "Are you insane?" Maris raced after him, voice taut with strain. Aren didn't answer, pushing faster. At the chamber door, he paused to catch his breath, peering inside. Elarin was on its feet, tense and scanning its surroundings, clearly sensing the threat. "Elarin," Aren called softly. "We're in deep trouble. I need your help." Elarin growled low, stepping close as if ready to defend him at all costs. Aren placed a hand on its massive form, feeling its strong, steady heartbeat. "I know you don't want to fight," he said gently, "but this time, we've got no choice." A chilling voice cut through the hall, accompanied by heavy footsteps. "Dr. Kael, if you're smart, hand over that creature now. Don't waste my time." Aren turned, heart racing, to see a hulking, scarred man approaching, Cray Morn, a notorious, merciless creature trafficker. Aren squared his shoulders, stepping in front of Elarin. "You'll never take Elarin, Cray." Cray laughed coldly. "Don't talk big, Doctor. I'm not playing." He drew his weapon, aiming at a young technician fleeing nearby. A single shot rang out, and the technician crumpled silently, lifeless. Aren stared in horror, fury surging within him. "You, monster." Cray smirked, his tone eerily calm. "That was just a warning. Don't make me do it again. Now, hand over the beast." Aren clenched his fists, stepping closer to Elarin, whispering, "We can't give in." "Ready?" Elarin roared powerfully, affirming its resolve. Cray stood opposite, his face unnervingly calm. He showed no fear of Elarin. Instead, he grinned coldly, eyeing the massive creature beside Aren with interest. "Dr. Kael, I don't intend to waste time with you now," Cray said slowly, his voice steady but menacing. "But mark my words, that precious creature will be mine, sooner or later. If you don't want to lose more colleagues, you'd better rethink your stance." Aren's fists tightened, barely containing the rage boiling inside, his voice trembling with defiance. "You'll never have Elarin, Cray. I'll stop you at all costs." Cray sneered, his eyes icy and challenging. "You really think you can protect this entire station, Kael? Or that your monster can take on my whole crew?" With that, he gestured lightly, and his pirates inexplicably lowered their weapons and retreated. As Cray and his men vanished around the corridor's bend, Aren felt a deep unease settle in. Maris approached, her gaze a mix of suspicion and worry. "Why'd he back off so easily?" she muttered. "Something's wrong, Kael." Aren nodded slowly, dread gnawing at him. Just then, the station speakers blared, "Emergency alert. Control center breached. Full security override lost." Aren and Maris locked eyes, their faces paling in unison. "The control center," Maris whispered, horrified. "He distracted us on purpose to seize the most critical point." A frantic voice crackled through Maris's comms, "The station security chief, tense and desperate, Dr. Maris, we're cut off. All security doors are locked from the control center. Our units can't reach it." "It was his plan all along," Aren said, meeting Maris's gaze with fierce determination. "We have to retake the control center. If we don't, there's no escape, for us or Elarin." He turned to Elarin, his eyes resolute yet tender. "You still okay? We're facing our toughest challenge yet." Elarin dipped its head, letting out a deep, resolute growl, a steadfast pledge of loyalty and readiness. Maris watched, placing her trust for the first time in the creature she'd once distrusted. She took a deep breath and said firmly, "All right. If this is the only way to protect everyone on Cytara IX, I'm with you both." The trio swiftly left the corridor, heading straight for the control center now under Kraymorn's grip. The main hallway to the control center pulsed with flashing red lights, amplifying the chaos and tension. Cold alarms echoed relentlessly, a stark reminder to all on Cytara IX that this was no drill. A real battle was unfolding in the heart of the Space Alliance's most advanced research station. Aren and Elarin moved quickly through the narrow passages, Maris trailing behind, hesitant yet aware there were no alternatives. A single misstep now could cost the entire station dearly. Aren halted just before the control center door. He pressed against the icy metal wall, signaling Elarin to stay still beside him. Elarin breathed heavily, its muscled frame taut, primed for the life-or-death fight ahead. Maris watched them both, her eyes a mix of strain and evident concern, unable to shake her fear of betting the station's fate on a creature she'd once wanted dead. "You sure about this, Kael?" she whispered, voice tight with worry. "There's no other way," Aren replied softly, his gaze fixed ahead. "We have to take back the control center. If not, Cytara IX falls to Kray, and we can't stop him from taking Elarin." Maris sighed heavily, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine. Stick to your plan. But whatever happens, the staff's safety comes first." "I know," Aren reassured her. He glanced at Elarin once more, his eyes brimming with trust and resolve. "Ready?" Elarin let out a low, forceful growl, affirming its commitment. Doubt was gone, Aren felt the creature's absolute faith in him. They'd moved beyond fear, their invisible bond was stronger than ever. "Let's go," Aren said, taking a deep breath before stepping toward the control center door. The metal door slid open slowly, revealing chaos within. The control center, once the beating heart of the universe's most advanced research hub, was now fully under pirate control. Four armed raiders in thick armor, wielding heavy energy rifles, held the remaining technicians hostage. At the center stood Kraymorn, the mastermind, manipulating controls with a triumphant, dangerous air. Kray looked up as Aren entered, flashing a cold, smug smile. "Finally, you're here, Dr. Kael," he said, his icy eyes brimming with challenge. "I knew you couldn't stay away from that monster. But are you ready to pay the price?" Aren stepped forward, standing tall, his voice calm despite the threat. "You're the one who should prepare, Kray. Stop now, before it's too late." Kray laughed loudly, his voice echoing through the room, chilling and mocking. "Too late? You think that beast can take me and my army down? Ridiculous." He nodded sharply. Two pirates triggered a powerful energy trap. A blinding blue grid shot out, enveloping the space before Aren and Elarin. In an instant, Elarin was ensnared, thrashing desperately, its pained roars filling the air. Aren rushed forward, horrified. "Elarin! No!" But it was too late. The massive creature was fully immobilized, its violet eyes pleading with Aren in agony. His heart clenched at seeing his companion trapped in such a cruel snare. "You made a mistake challenging me, Kael," Cray said, his voice dripping with victory and ruthlessness. "Now, this precious creature is mine. And you, I've no reason to keep you alive." Cray raised his weapon, aiming at Aren. In that life-or-death moment, time seemed to slow. But a sudden energy shot rang out. Cray staggered, staring in shock at the wound on his arm. Aren turned to see Maris near the door, energy pistol in hand, her face set with resolve. "No one harms my staff," she said coldly. In that instant, Aren knew the fight wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. Maris's shot froze the control center in a fleeting stillness. Blood dripped from Cray's arm, yet his face retained its cold, ruthless edge. His eyes locked onto Maris with fury and surprise. "I didn't expect a cold fish like you to pull the trigger, Dr. Maris," Cray said, his voice thick with disdain. "But this changes nothing." Maris stepped closer, raising her gun higher, her gaze steady despite a faint tremble. "I won't let you keep harming this station." Cray smirked, stepping back with smug confidence. He signaled, and two pirates lunged forward, firing relentlessly at Maris. She dodged, retreating toward the door, but the situation was clearly spiraling into dire straits. Meanwhile, Aren knelt beside Elarin, frantically seeking a way to free his giant companion from the glowing blue energy net. His hands shook, heart racing as he realized the device was fiendishly complex, nearly impossible to disable conventionally. "Hold on, Elarin, I'll get you out," Aren whispered with fierce determination, trying to reassure both himself and the creature, though despair crept in. Elarin met his gaze with deep trust, fueling Aren's resolve. He pulled tools from his small medical kit, attempting to break the net's nodes. Electric shocks bit into his hands, but he pressed on, ignoring the pain. Across the room, Maris fought back, though she was no soldier. An energy bolt grazed her shoulder, leaving a long, searing burn. She crumpled, her gun slipping away. Cray advanced, his eyes gleaming with malice. "See, Maris. Defying me was your dumbest move," he said, raising his weapon again, aiming at her fallen form. Just then, a earth-shaking roar erupted from Elarin, fierce and commanding, like thunder in the night. Aren had managed to destroy a section of the net, enough for Elarin to break free. With staggering power, the giant creature tore the trap apart. Its violet eyes blazed with protective rage. In a flash, Elarin charged at Cray and his crew. The pirates fired wildly in panic, but their energy rounds couldn't pierce its thick hide. The ancient beast lashed out with a massive forelimb, knocking two raiders unconscious instantly. Cray unleashed a barrage at Elarin, to no avail. In desperation, he turned his weapon on Aren, hoping to regain control. But Elarin anticipated it. It leaped to shield Aren, taking the full force of a powerful energy blast. The shot drew a pained cry from Elarin, yet it didn't waver. Spinning swiftly, it lunged at Cray, delivering a crushing blow that sent him crashing into the metal wall, collapsing unconscious. The room fell into a heavy silence after the brutal clash. Aren rushed to Elarin, anxiously checking its wounds. The deep energy burn on its body pierced him like his own pain. "Elarin. Are you okay?" he whispered, voice trembling with emotion and worry. The giant creature lowered its head, gazing at Aren with affection, nuzzling him gently as if to comfort him. Aren felt it reassuring him, it was fine, and this sacrifice was worth their trust. In the corner, Maris rose shakily, clutching her aching shoulder. She stared at the scene with awe and emotion. A creature once deemed a monster had fought with all it had to protect Aren and the station. She approached Aren, her voice hoarse with feeling. "I was wrong about Elarin." "You were right, Kael." Aren turned to her, his eyes warm with understanding. "I get it, Liz. We've all made mistakes, what matters is we've seen it and changed." Maris nodded slowly, a genuine trust flickering in her eyes for Elarin, Aren, and the future they might forge together. Outside, security teams moved in to secure the scene. The remaining pirates were swiftly detained, and Cray Morn was escorted away, still unconscious. Aren stood, resting a hand on Elarin's mighty form, knowing they'd overcome their greatest trial. From now on, no one could doubt the extraordinary bond between him and this colossal creature. After the fierce battle at the control center, Cytara IX swiftly regained control. Morn and his pirate crew were apprehended and loaded onto a Space Alliance security ship that had just docked to assist. The station gradually returned to normal, though scars of the intense fight lingered everywhere. Aren stood alone in a special medical bay, quietly bandaging a minor energy burn on his arm from the skirmish. The occasional sting was trivial compared to the joy and relief flooding him. He could hardly believe it was over, and that Elarin, his most extraordinary friend, was safe. The door slid open softly, and Dr. Liz Maris entered, her face unusually relaxed. Her shoulder wound had been treated, but her eyes still carried the fatigue of the ordeal. "You okay, Kael?" she asked gently. Aren smiled faintly. "I'm fine. You?" Maris nodded, a hint of awkwardness in her demeanor. "I'm all right. But honestly, I owe you thanks." "Thanks?" Aren raised an eyebrow. She sighed, her gaze softening. "I always thought creatures like Elarin were just threats. Today, I learned trust and understanding can be the key to change. I owe you and Elarin an apology." Aren's smile warmed, genuine. "You don't owe anyone anything, Maris. You stood with us when it got darkest." Just then, a familiar low growl sounded from the door. Elarin lumbered in, its massive frame nearly filling the room, knocking over medical tools with a clatter. It paused beside Aren, tilting its head as if checking on him. "Elarin." Aren called cheerfully, resting a hand on its warm bulk. "Feeling better?" Elarin nuzzled him lightly, nearly toppling him, prompting a hearty laugh. Maris watched, a rare smile gracing her lips. "Looks like you've got a best friend now, Kael," she teased. "Must be a hassle when it decides to visit your room." Aren laughed loudly, nodding. "True. But I'll take that hassle." Days later, as Cytara IX fully recovered, Aren sat in his quarters, diligently documenting the recent events. He wrote of Elarin, Maris's courage, and the remarkable shift in how they viewed once feared creatures. A sudden crash jolted him, and he turned to see Elarin standing in the room, looking innocent despite having upended his desk, scattering papers and tools everywhere. "Elarin! What the heck?" Aren exclaimed, trying to sound stern but failing. The giant creature lowered its head, violet eyes glistening with mock remorse, though its tail accidentally knocked over more chairs. Aren gave up, laughing heartily as he approached, patting its head. "All right, I get it, it's not your fault," he chuckled. "But next time, come in gently, okay?" Elarin huffed lightly in agreement, nuzzling him affectionately. In that moment, Aren knew Elarin was no longer a mysterious, dangerous enigma. It had truly become a dear friend, an indispensable part of his life.